Okay, let's unpack this. When we talk about the military budget or, a new fighter jet, the focus is almost always on the physical stuff.
Right. Speed, stealth, how many missiles it can carry.
Exactly. But if you really dig into the technical documents, the papers that detail modern aerial supremacy, you realize something. The F-35's true edge, it's superpower. It isn't in the airframe at all.
It's the brain. It's this unprecedented computational architecture that's built for one specific reason, to handle the data smog of 21st century warfare.
Data smog. I like that.
It's the perfect term. We're in an era where the sheer volume of information is just exploding, and the ability to turn all that raw data into actionable knowledge, that process of knowledge distillation, is the single most important factor.
In any high-stakes environment, really.
Absolutely. So our mission in this deep dive is to basically guide you through some pretty dense technical papers and pull out the vital pieces so you can understand how the F-35 actually achieves sensor fusion.
This is your shortcut past all the complexity, all the jargon, straight to the core of the capability. And to really grasp why this brain is so critical, we have to start, well, not with an algorithm.
No, we have to start with a very specific and, frankly, pretty unnerving operational example from the source material. An exercise called Operation Midnight Hammer.
This gives us the why should I care hook right from the get-go.
It really does, because what's so fascinating about this operation is the sheer scale of it and then the silence that followed. We're talking about a major U.S. attack plan targeting 3 Iranian nuclear facilities: Fordo, Natanz, and Esfahan.
This was not a small skirmish.
No, this was a massive statement.
Let's talk about the size of that strike package. The least defended site, Esfahan, was hit by, what, 24 to 30 cruise missiles?
Launched from submarines in the Indian Ocean, yeah. The analysis in the papers just says the damage was quite heavy.
But Fordo and Natanz, those were the real challenge.
Oh, absolutely. These places are buried deep underground. We're talking multiple layers of concrete and rock.
So to hit them, the U.S. brought out the big guns. 7 B-2 stealth bombers.
Flying all the way from the continental United States. A huge distance.
And what they were carrying, I mean, this was not your standard bomb.
Not even close. They were dropping the massive ordnance penetrator, the GBU-57.
The bunker buster.
It's the ultimate bunker buster. It's a 12-ton weapon designed specifically to punch through tens of meters of hardened material before detonating a 5-ton explosive payload.
And the sources really highlight the gravity here. In total, they dropped 14 of these MOPs.
Which was roughly half the entire U.S. arsenal of that specific weapon at the time.
When you drop half your inventory of a strategic asset like that,
yeah,
that's not just a show of force, that's absolute intent.
But the B-2s didn't go in alone. They were preceded by a huge strike package, almost certainly all 5th-gen aircraft F-22s, F-35s.
And their job was what the papers call a throw-down-the-door attack.
Exactly. They were clearing the way. They used about 60 precision weapons to preemptively hit known Iranian air defenses along the route.
Just carving a completely sanitized path for the B-2s.
Right. Overall, the reports mention about 125 aircraft were involved, but you have to remember a lot of those would have been essential refueling tankers.
Okay, but here's the anomaly. This is the part that really demonstrates what we're talking about. U.S. sources claim that despite this massive, overwhelming force, they were not seen.
Not a single weapon was launched against them by the Iranian defenses. 0.
That's where you have to pause.
You do. Because even if you accept that the 5th-gen fighters and the B-2s are super stealthy and that their electronic jamming was effective,
the cruise missiles aren't.
The cruise missiles are not that difficult of a target. They follow predictable paths, they're slower than a jet. The defenses should have reacted to those at the very least.
So why the non-reaction? Why the silence?
The documents lay out 2 main theories. The first one is pretty straightforward. U.S. air power, combined with total surprise and massive electronic warfare, was just so overwhelming that the Iranians couldn't respond. Their command and control was probably just gone.
Suppressed completely. But what's the second theory?
The second one suggests a conscious choice.
The preservation theory.
Yes, very similar to what the Serbians did in the 90s. The idea is that Iran saw this overwhelming strike coming and consciously decided not to switch on and engage its legacy air defense systems. They saved them for another day for a less powerful enemy.
But hold on. Even if they were being jammed, wouldn't the old doctrine say you should at least launch blind missiles just to harass the source of the jamming?
That's the critical detail. Yes, it would. But the sources are clear. Nothing was launched. At all.
So whether it was overwhelming tech or a conscious choice to stand down.
The result was the same: complete, total, and completely unexpected dominance. And that level of silent supremacy, well, it's only possible if you've mastered information.
Which is the perfect bridge. We see the result of the dominance, but how do you get there? It starts by solving the biggest threat to any pilot today, just sheer data.
We have to talk about the core problem, that idea of beta smog. It builds on this prediction that in the information age, we'd be, quote, drowning in information but starved for knowledge.
And the modern cockpit is the prime example of that.
It is. It seems backward, right? You'd think more data means better decisions.
Of course.
But in high-speed combat aviation, no. The increasing volume of raw data from the radar, from the optical systems, from data links, it doesn't help. It just leads to this exponential surge in pilot workload.
And a loss of situational awareness, the SM.
A debilitating loss of it. If you're overwhelmed, you lose the plot.
And losing the plot means you slow down your OODA loop. Observe, orient, decide, act. The faster your loop, the more likely you are to win.
Exactly. So the solution has to be fusion. The source material even quotes E.O. Wilson, who talked about the need for a synthesizer.
The fusion algorithms are that synthesizer.
That's their entire job, to combine all the relevant information at the exact right time to cut through the noise. It's important to remember, fusion is about estimating or predicting the state of the environment. It deals in probabilities, not certainties.
For the single-seat F-35 pilot, the system isn't a nice-to-have. It's mandatory. You've got the radar, the APG-81, the electro-optical targeting system, the EOTs.
The distributed aperture system, the DAS, which gives the pilot that 360-degree vision, plus all the essential offboard data coming in from other assets.
Without really good fusion, that pilot would be manually trying to correlate hundreds of different tracks and measurements while flying the plane.
The display would be an unusable mess. A $100 million jet would be effectively worthless. The software has to do the work.
Okay, so let's get into the structure. How does it manage all this? The engineers built a system on 4 distinct levels of intelligence.
Right. And if you can get your head around these 4 levels, you basically understand the F-35's brain.
Let's start at the bottom. Level 1.
Level 1 is object assessment. This is the foundation. The system does 2 main things here. First, through data association, it figures out if a faint radar blip, an optical flash from the DAS, and a track coming in over a data link are all describing the same object.
So it's not 3 bogies, it's 1 bogey seen 3 different ways.
Exactly. Then, state estimation calculates that object's kinematic state, so its precise position, velocity, acceleration, and gives it a preliminary ID.
So that's the raw material, the state and the ID.
That's the raw material for everything else.
Makes sense. You need the basic facts.
Yeah.
Where is it and what is it? So if level 1 gives you the individual facts, what does level 2 do?
Level 2 is situation assessment. This is where it starts to get smart. It takes all those individual level 1 objects and starts inferring relationships between them. It's pattern recognition.
So it's not just 4 dots on a screen.
It's a flight of 4 working together, or maybe they're flying a known defensive formation. This is the difference between seeing dots and seeing a strategy unfold.
Okay, now this is where it gets critical for the pilot. Level 3. Why do you need it? Isn't knowing the enemy's formation enough?
That's a great question. Because knowing there's a threat isn't the same as knowing the risk to you personally. Level 3 is impact assessment.
It adds context.
Lethality and survivability context, yes. The system uses all the data from the first 2 levels to calculate the specific impact on the F-35.
Give me the example from the papers.
So the system won't just show you a symbol for a ground-based air defense site. It'll determine, based on your vector, your speed, your altitude, that this site right here is an immediate high-probability threat because you are flying into its no-escape zone.
And it might say the other one down there is fine to ignore for now.
But that one down there can be safely avoided because its range profile presents no immediate danger. It's a personalized, real-time risk assessment.
That is the real difference between data and knowledge. But the key to making this whole thing work at combat speed, that's the last level.
Absolutely. Level 4 is process refinement. This closes the loop. It's the autonomous part, the sensor resource management. The system uses a constant feedback loop to automatically change what the sensors are doing.
So the pilot doesn't have to manage the sensors themselves. The jet is deciding what to look at next.
Precisely. Once the fusion engine decides track A is fully characterized, we know where it is, and what threat it poses, the Level 4 manager automatically tells the radar and optical systems to stop wasting energy on it.
And it points them somewhere else.
It immediately cues them to gather new data on the more ambiguous track B, while maybe just ignoring the non-critical track C altogether.
It automates tasks a human is just too slow to do in a dogfight. It accelerates that ODA loop to machine speeds.
And that automation, well, it brings us to the really big technical leap that defines fifth-gen fusion.
In older jets, pre-fifth gen, they had things like correlational display fusion.
Which basically just picked the best track from one sensor and showed you that. Or track blending, which kind of averaged the outputs.
But the limitation was the update rate.
Severe limitation. The whole system was only as fast as its slowest sensor. If your radar took 4 seconds to build a track, your fused picture could only update every 4 seconds.
So what did the F-35 change?
This is the secret sauce. The F-35 systems process raw sensor measurements directly. The unprocessed radar blips, the raw flashes of light, not the pre-processed filtered track that the sensor spits out.
By taking in the raw data from the very beginning.
The central fusion engine creates the most precise, most accurate track possible, faster than anything before it.
And the practical benefits of that.
Huge. First, you get earlier track discovery. The system can use a tiny faint detection from any sensor or even another F-35 to confirm a track way sooner.
And it helps you hold on to tracks too.
Right. If a target flies out of your radar's view, but your DAS or your wingman can still see it, the system track is maintained. It keeps its ID, its state, all seamlessly for the pilot.
So this fusion engine is the central black box.
It is. It uses these things called virtual interface models, which are like super complex drivers, to talk to all the hardware. And then the final system tracks that it creates feedback into that level 4 manager to tell the sensors what to do next. It's a closed loop.
Okay, let's tackle data sharing. This is fascinating. If you have this perfect fused Tier 3 track on your jet, you can't just send that to your wingman, can you? Wouldn't that mess up his system?
You would absolutely corrupt his system. It's a huge problem in networking called data coupling. If you send data that's already been through your fusion algorithm to another jet, that jet's processor assumes the data is raw and independent.
And that causes problems.
Massive problems. Track instability, jitter. Eventually you'll lose the track altogether. It's like pouring filtered water back into the dirty reservoir and trying to filter it again.
So what's the F-35 solution?
A really clever tiered system. The pilot sees the fully fused, super accurate solution. That's called Tier 3. But when the jet shares data with other F-35s over the MEDI-L data link, it only shares the Tier 1 solution.
Okay, and what is Tier 1?
Tier 1 is data about a track that's based only on that jet's onboard sensor measurements. It's essentially the raw data, scrubbed clean of any fusion bias from the jet that sent it.
So the receiving F-35 treats that Tier 1 data just like a measurement from its own radar.
Exactly. It treats it as an independent piece of information.
But aren't you losing the accuracy of the Tier 3 track by only sharing Tier 1?
But you're not. You're sacrificing the immediate single-jet fidelity to gain long-term stability and accuracy for the entire formation. The receiving jet takes that independent data, feeds it into its own fusion engine, and generates its own fresh, even more accurate Tier 3 track.
That is genius. It turns the whole formation into one giant networked sensor.
It does, and there was a real-world test of this back in 2016. An F-35 used this exact fused track sharing method to cue surface-based weapons missiles that had zero line of sight to a distant target drone.
Incredible. So now we know the process. Let's talk about the result. Combat ID, accurate identification. This is the F-35's other superpower.
And we're talking about characterization that goes way beyond just friendly or enemy. It's affiliation, class, type, subtype, and, amazingly, mission configuration.
This is the part in the documents that blew my mind. The system actually tries to figure out the payload, the specific weapons hanging under the wings of an enemy fighter.
Yes. It might determine, with high probability, that a Chinese J-10 is carrying 4 specific air-to-air missiles. And that granular detail feeds directly back into that level 3 impact assessment.
Because now you don't just know what it is, you know what it can do.
And how dangerous it is to you right now. To do this, the system moved away from the old if-then logic.
That old heuristic approach. If it looks like a duck, it's a duck.
Right, which doesn't work in a confusing battle space. The F-35 uses a probabilistic evidential reasoning approach, specifically a method called Dempster-Schaeffer theory.
Why that one? Is that just a fancy way of saying it's better at guessing?
Not at all. It's built to handle ambiguity. It's a statistical model for complexity. When you have a track that is, say, 40% likely to be platform A, 40% B, and 20% is just unknown, this formulation is much better at weighing that uncertainty and preventing a false declaration.
It's all about probabilities.
And to make those probabilities work, the F-35 relies on these massive, constantly updated relational threat databases, scenario files,
Gigabytes of data.
gigabytes. And they encode the transitional probability of observing a feature given a particular platform subtype. It's an incredibly detailed intelligence backbone for the entire system.
And this brings us full circle, back to level 4. The system uses that database to be more efficient.
Exactly. The autonomous sensor management doesn't try to get every track to 100% maximum accuracy. It just drives each track to a sufficient level of accuracy for the pilot to make a decision and keep that ODA loop spinning fast.
It saves a huge amount of computational power for the things that matter most.
It does.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. We started with Operation Midnight Hammer, this example of total air dominance. The technology that makes that possible is the F-35's computational brain.
A brain that masters data smog using this structured, multi-level fusion from level 1 object ID up to level 4 automated sensor management.
And it's all paired with that cooperative sensing, using that ingenious Tier 1 and Tier 3 data sharing method.
But that whole technological marvel depends entirely on the off-board intelligence. The sources are very clear that creating these massive multi-gigabyte threat libraries, these scenario files, it requires specialized labs, constant work, huge resources. The source actually calls the process excruciatingly complex.
Which brings us to the final provocative question for you, the listener, to think about.
The F-35's fusion is technically superior, it's brilliant, but given how fast new threats are emerging all over the world, could the system's reliance on this massive, resource-intensive, and potentially slow to update intelligence infrastructure, could that be its ultimate limiting factor?
The system is a genius at processing data.
But if the data it's given is even slightly out of date, its total reliance on that complex digital architecture could become its single biggest vulnerability. That's the fundamental trade-off of having a digital superpower.